Hiya, friendos. Welcome back to another episode of Washing Dishes. Happy St. Patrick's Day. If I did this right, this video is coming out the day before St. Patrick's Day. We'll see. So, it's St. Patrick's Day-ish, so we're going to make corned beef and cabbage. Right? Duh! So, I've got a corned beef, 2 different corned beefs that I brined a week ago. Before you change the channel, you don't need to do that. You can get good corned beef if you just start it today. Or even tomorrow. Most grocery stores have pre-done corned beef that will come out just fine. And I will give you the techniques to make those nice. So, I started these a week ago. We're going to cook it up today. And then I'm going to serve it to my friends, well, today as you watch this video. So, we're going to do one kind of traditional and rustic. We're going to do the other a little more modernist and fancy. And you can let me know in the comments which one you think came out better. So until then, let's switch back over to Wash in the Past, who will bring us up to speed. Unlike the brisket we did a couple weeks ago, flashback to a couple weeks ago when I made brisket. This doesn't need to be trimmed in the same way. There is a nice fat cap on here, and we want to preserve as much of that as possible. In this case, we are going to take out some of this, but probably not all of it. So, let's go ahead and trim that up, and then I'll show you how we're going to brine this one, and then we're going to do something a little different with the smaller one. I've got an idea. But first, let's get them trimmed.
And trimming these up is largely just a function of cutting off the big chunks of gooey fat. It's a lot of the fat in both inside the muscle and kind of the harder, chunkier stuff is going to break down during cooking, but this gooey stuff is going to stay gooey the whole time, and it's just not good eats. So we're going to trim off as much of that as we can. There's going to be little bits of it here and there. There's nothing we can do about it. I'm a good butcher. I'm not a great butcher, but even if I were a great butcher, there would still only be so much I could do about it. So we're going to do what we can, and we're not going to freak out about it. Worst case scenario, you can just cut it off before you serve it. It's not the end of the world. Anyway, so with these nice and trimmed up, we're going to go ahead and get to the brining part of this operation. For the brining, let's go with the experimental one first. I'm calling this experimental even though I know that this works because I know other people have done it. Anyway, so we're going to salt this pretty heavily, but we're not going to use like a specific percentage or anything. I'm essentially going to wet cure this in the corning spices, which, spoiler warning, are just pickling spices. So I am essentially wet curing brisket in pickling spices, which is how you make corned beef. You can, Serious Eats and Good Eats and numerous other sources have excellent discussions of corned beef in extreme detail that you can listen to or watch, and I recommend them. They're really interesting. But the short version of it is that corned beef is essentially pickled. Kind of. It's weird. Honestly, if you want a really good history of corned beef, the Alton Brown Good Eats episode back during its original run has a really fascinating history of corned beef. Anyway, so in retrospect, I should have spread these spices out better. I don't know what I was thinking, but with everything wrapped up, we're going to seal it, and then, yeah, you can see I tried. Anyway, we're going to seal it up, and this is going to go in the fridge for a week. I'm going to massage it every once in a while, but otherwise it's just going to sit and relax and wet age. So here's the photo I took when I thought I was recording until it looked like this, which is the salt and the spices in there, and then I'm adding some brown sugar, and then I'm going to add 2 cups of water, which is, I'm using Alton Brown's ratio, which is, he uses 1 cup of salt to 2 quarts of water, which is a 1 part salt to 8 parts water. I'm using half the liquid, and I'm using half the salt, but I'm maintaining that 1 to 8 ratio. I am sealing this up in a relatively airtight, but actually fairly watertight container. And this is going in my fridge for the week to be rotated every other day until it's ready to go. So I'm starting on Thursday, so I rotated it on Sunday, Tuesday, and then cooked it on a Thursday. So easy peasy, and once it's been sitting for a little bit, you could do these for, you could probably let these go for about 2 weeks. I did a big batch at some point of like a dozen briskets that I left for 28 days. But at home, with home refrigeration, I would probably go with like 2 weeks max. After that week is up, you're going to want to remove your brisket from the brine and give it a good rinse. In this case, we're rinsing the sous vide one. As you can see, I'm paying the price for not spreading those spices around. It discolored a little bit, but don't worry, it's fine. It's just the color. But we're giving it a little rinse, and then for this one, we're going to reseal it in a new sous vide bag. If you wanted to, you could cook this one using the braise method that I'm going to show you later, instead of resealing it for sous vide. But yeah, once it's dried off and squished out all that extra moisture, we're going to go ahead and just seal it back up into another vacuum bag. And then into a sous vide for 24 to 48 hours at 140 degrees.
I think this is about where we came in. Would you like to say a few words to mark the occasion? No? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get this rinsed off, just like you saw me do with this one. I don't know if that's in frame, but it's the sous vide one. I'm going to get this rinsed off, and then we're just going to get it straight into a pot. So, yeah, super, super simple. You already saw me rinse one off. It's the same thing. So, next you see will be this beautiful piece of brisket getting lowered into a simmering pot of water. Stay tuned. You may be saying to yourself, Wash, didn't you say you were going to do this with cabbage and potatoes and some carrots? And I would say yes, I did. But this is going to cook for 2 to 3 hours, and that would make the potatoes and cabbage and carrots super mushy, which is bad. So we're going to start this and let it go for a little while, and then we'll add our veggies.
So remember how I said this was super simple? It's super duper simple. Good food does not have to be complicated, for Pete's sake. Simple food can be both delicious and exciting, and just every way that food can be good, simple food can be good. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. So, we're going to peel and cut the carrots into some big chunks. We're going to cut the cabbage into wedges. I'm leaving the like core section in so that it stays together when we cook it, so that I don't have as many just loose leaves of cabbage floating around. The potatoes are getting washed and boiled whole. This is a slow cook, and it's, it's a holiday meal. We can take our time with this. So, with the veggies ready to go, it's time to take a little bit of a break, maybe a nap, and then we're going to get the veggies in once the beef has had a bit of a head start. However, in my case, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the fancy version of the dish. We're going to start that by searing off our cabbage in some beef tallow, which I have floating around from the last brisket that I cooked. Well, it was the same brisket. It was just the last time I cooked it. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to get that seared off and then out of the pan to be replaced with some carrots, which we are also going to sear off. And then we are going to add, this is about half a cup, maybe a little bit more. I honestly didn't measure. I just kind of put enough to cover them halfway of beef stock. And then I'm going to cover them and just let them simmer on low until they are the doneness that I want them to be, which is cooked but not mushy. I do want a little bit of crunch. That's one of the reasons I cut them this big. And the other reason I cut them this big is because these like big cylinders of carrot with a nice sear on them just look absolutely beautiful on the finished plate. And once the carrots have had about 20 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and take the cover off and set them to the side of the pan and go ahead and put the cabbage in so that the cabbage can finish braising off. We're using slow cooking methods for all of this. It's just that even using slow cooking methods for the veggies, it still doesn't take very long. While those are finishing braising, let's check out our corned beef. I've liberated it from the vacuum bag, patted it dry, and let's check it out. Ooh, gorgeous. So that pink is because it is essentially somewhere on the medium to medium rare side, which is absolutely wonderful. It's exactly what I wanted. I got a nice pink corned beef without using any of the nitrates and chemicals. Not that those are bad, it's just I didn't have them on hand. Anyway, I'm going to slice a few slices of this to sear off. If I were serving this to a group at the time, and when I do, I'm going to sear off the whole thing in a big chunk. It'll be beautiful. But before we sear it off, I'm going to have to go ahead and make the sauce. Oh no, what a shame. I absolutely love making sauce. So we're going to retrieve our veggies out of the broth, turn the heat up so we get a nice little boil to reduce it down, and then we're going to mix in a few different ingredients, specifically some mustard, which I am going to aggressively tiny whisk in, and then just some salt and pepper and a little bit of butter just for gloss and stuff. Once that's done, we're going to get that out, and then we'll sear off the corned beef. Here's my PSA to you. Don't use a blowtorch on a cutting board, even if the cutting board manufacturer says that it can stand up to a lot of heat. They didn't mean this. I should have just used the pan like I thought I was going to. Anyway, mistakes were made. It's beautiful. I just have a couple of scorch marks on my cutting board. Anyway, so let's check in on the other version, and then we'll go from there.
All right, let's get the big guy out of the big pot. Cabbage and potatoes and carrots look awesome. Come here. There we go. Ooh. I don't want it to fall apart on me. All right. Whew. Ooh, right through it. Nice. There we go. All right, I'm going to plate this all up and then give it all a taste. Back in a sec.
First, the more traditional one is just going to be veg and meat on a plate. I'm not trying to be creative here. I'm trying to serve dinner to some people. Yeah, so like I said, cabbage, carrots, potatoes, stack of corned beef. Really don't need any more. I've got some mustard that I didn't put on the plate and should have. Brown mustard is my personal favorite corned beef condiment. Your mileage may, of course, vary with your personal preferences. All right, let's do the complicated one here. And to be honest, the complicated one isn't actually that complicated. I'm just dropping some sauce on the plate so that things kind of stay where I put them. And then I'm stacking everything much the same way as I stacked everything on the traditional plate. I took a little more time and sliced the potatoes, but these are the same potatoes that I put on the traditional version of this, because there's nothing wrong with some delicious boiled potatoes. Essentially, the fancy version of this is all of the same ingredients and flavors as the traditional version. There's just a little bit more technique and a little bit more time and effort put into that version. So if you ever wonder why a restaurant can charge, I don't know, probably somewhere in the $20 to $25 range for a plate like this, whereas they can only charge somewhere in the $15 range for the other one, it's that extra time and energy and effort and technique. It's just more work, and it gets you a better result. Or maybe does it? Let's go to the taste test and find out.
I have been waiting all day to dive into this, so let's do it. I'm going to go with the traditional one first. I'm going to get a fork. I'm going to go with the traditional one first, just so we get like a baseline. Usually I attack veggies, but this is about the corned beef, so. Yep. Fall apart tender. delicious, like, corned beef flavor. Obviously, the richness of the fattiness of the brisket. Delicious. And then the beef and the braising liquid should have imparted some really nice, kind of rich, earthy flavors to the carrots, which should balance their sweetness nicely. And it does, and they're not too mushy. Let's try out the potatoes. It's hard to mess up potatoes. I want more salt. I want more salt, but that's me. I always want more salt. I'm crazy like that. And the cabbage, of course. Yep. That's some tasty braised cabbage. But let's try the fancy version. This time, I am going for the veg first. We'll start with the carrots. Get a little of the sauce. And we just seared these and then braised them for about 15 minutes. Oh, man. It's just a whole, like, level up from the traditional. The searing, the sauce, it just adds a depth and complexity of flavor that is just really spectacular. Let's try the cabbage. Yeah, same thing. Braising it in that like last project's beef stock made a huge difference. The potatoes, honestly, I didn't mess with the potatoes. Like I said, it's hard to mess up potatoes, and I didn't want to do a whole lot more. With the sauce, the salt level's great, which means you might want to back off a little on the salt when you do it. All right, main event. Let's try this torched corned beef. I want a sandwich, obviously, but that is so good. So good. I've sous vide brisket before, but I've never done corned beef. I've never sous vide corned beef using the seal as the cure, and it's amazing. Make either of them, but if you have the time and energy, try elevating it. It's really out of this world. But other than that, I think that's where I'm going to leave it. As I mentioned, tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day. Have a wonderful and safe St. Patrick's Day. And try some corned beef. You can catch me in the socials. I'd love a like and a subscribe. I've got more video. Ooh, that was that good. I've got more videos. But yeah, thanks so very much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your time zone. Bye-bye.